The crowd goes silent. A shy Filipino man in his late 30s steps onto the AGT stage, his hands trembling as he clutches an old cracked guitar. His jacket is worn, his shoes scuffed, but his smile, it's pure hope. Simon raises an eyebrow, intrigued. He softly says, "This one's for my father. He taught me that kindness and music can heal any heart." When the first note leaves his lips, a voice so hauntingly familiar, echoing Elvis Presley himself, the entire audience freezes. A performance born not from fame, but from love, loss, and the courage to dream again. The sun dipped low over the bustling streets of Manila, painting the city in golden hues. Children chased each other through narrow alleys. Vendors shouted their final prices, and jeepneys rumbled past in a symphony of horns and laughter. Amid the chaos stood Ramon, a man in his late 30s clutching an old scarred guitar that had seen better days. Its strings were slightly rusted, its wood faded by years of use. Yet to Ramon it was sacred. It was his father's. Each evening, as the sky dimmed and the streetlights flickered to life, Ramon would find his spot, the corner near the church, where the echoes of footsteps met the hum of hope. There he would sing, not for fame, not for glory, but for survival. His voice, deep, warm, and heartbreakingly sincere, carried through the night like a whisper from the past. Locals knew him as the Filipino Elvis. He wore second-hand leather shoes, a simple white shirt, and sometimes even a scarf that mimicked Presley's signature style. When he sang "Can't Help Falling in Love," couples would stop and smile. Vendors would pause mid-sale. Children would sit cross-legged on the curb, their small faces glowing with awe. It wasn't just a song, it was a feeling, but behind that voice lay a story of quiet struggle. Ramon wasn't singing for applause. He was singing to buy medicine for his father, a humble man who had once been a mechanic, now bedridden and weak. Every peso Ramon earned went toward his treatment, and every time he looked at his father's photograph taped to the side of his guitar, he whispered, "Hang in there, Pa. We'll get through this." Yet life has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. One evening, after hours of singing in the drizzle, Ramon returned home to find the small house eerily silent. His father's chair was empty. The faint hum of the fan was the only sound that filled the air. Ramon dropped his guitar and fell to his knees, his world crumbling in an instant. For days he didn't sing. The markets grew quieter without his songs. The people who once gathered to hear his voice asked where he had gone. But how could he sing when the reason for his music was gone? Then one morning, as he walked past his usual corner, he saw a little girl holding a flower. She looked up at him and said, "Kuya Ramon, my papa said you sing like an angel. Will you sing again?" Ramon stared at her, tears filling his eyes. He picked up his guitar, took a deep breath, and began to play. And as the melody filled the air once more, something inside him healed, because he realized that his father wasn't gone. He lived on in every song he sang. The rain fell softly that night, turning the streets of Manila into rivers of reflection. Shimmering lights, blurred umbrellas, and tired souls hurrying home. Ramon stood beneath the awning of a small bakery, his old guitar resting against his chest. The drizzle had soaked through his shoes, but he didn't care. He began to play softly, a song his father used to love, "Love Me Tender." His voice rose above the rain, raw and trembling, filled with memories of loss and love. People passed by, some smiled, some dropped coins, but one woman stopped. She was a middle-aged tourist, maybe American, with a camera slung around her neck and kindness written across her face. She stood there quietly, umbrella in hand, letting the rain soak her as she listened. When Ramon sang the final note, her eyes glistened with tears. She stepped closer and whispered, "You sound like Elvis, but there's something even more beautiful in your voice, and pain and hope together." Ramon smiled shyly and bowed. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, voice humble and gentle. He expected her to walk away like everyone else. But she didn't. Instead, she asked, "Why do you sing on the streets?" Ramon looked down at his guitar and answered softly, "I sing because it's the only thing that still connects me to my father. He used to tell me that music can heal the world, one heart at a time." For a moment, the woman said nothing. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, slightly wet from the rain. "Take this," she said. "It's not charity. It's a chance." Ramon hesitated. What do you mean? She smiled through her tears. There's an audition happening in Los Angeles. America's Got Talent. I know this sounds crazy, but you belong on that stage. The world needs to hear you. Ramon froze, stunned. Me? I can't afford to go to America. I barely make enough to eat. The woman gently placed the envelope in his hands. Inside was a plane ticket to Los Angeles, a small amount of cash, and a handwritten note that read, "The world is full of noise. Be the song that reminds it to feel again." Ramon's eyes filled with tears. He tried to refuse, but the woman shook her head. "Promise me one thing," she said. "If you ever make it big, help someone else like this someday." He nodded, unable to speak. When he looked up again, she was gone, lost in the rain like a fleeting miracle. That night, Ramon sat beneath a flickering streetlight, staring at the ticket in disbelief. The sound of thunder rolled overhead, and he whispered to the sky, "Pa, maybe this is your way of telling me to sing again." For the first time in years, hope burned bright in his heart, fragile but real. And so began a journey that would soon move millions around the world. The bright lights of America's Got Talent burned across the vast stage like 1,000 tiny suns. Backstage, Ramon clutched his old guitar so tightly his knuckles turned white. Around him, other performers laughed, rehearsed, and posed for cameras, but he stood quietly, whispering a prayer. He looked down at the guitar, the same one his father had played decades ago, and whispered, "This is for you. Fa, just stay with me." When the stagehand called his name, his heart raced. Next up, Ramon de la Cruz from the Philippines. He stepped into the spotlight and the crowd quieted. Simon Cowell leaned forward, curious. "Hello there. What's your name?" Ramon's voice trembled. "My name is Ramon. I came all the way from the Philippines." Simon smiled faintly. "That's quite the journey. What made you want to audition?" Ramon took a deep breath. "My father always believed that music can heal broken hearts. I lost him a few years ago, but every time I sing, I feel like he's right here beside me." The audience grew still. Simon nodded softly, his expression unreadable. "All right, Ramon, the stage is yours." Ramon closed his eyes. The first strum of his guitar echoed through the hall, raw, simple, pure. He began to sing, "Can't Help Falling in Love," his voice trembling at first, then soaring like a wave of emotion that washed over every soul in the room. His tone carried something deeper than imitation. It wasn't Elvis's voice. It was Elvis's spirit reborn in kindness, humility, and love. Every note held the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights on the streets. Every breath whispered of his father's memory. As he reached the final verse, the camera panned across the judges, Heidi clasping her hands to her heart, Howie wiping a tear, Sophia smiling softly. But Simon just sat there frozen. His lips parted slightly, but no words came. The music faded. Silence. Then, a standing ovation. Ramon blinked, overwhelmed, tears streaking his face. The crowd roared his name. Some audience members were crying. And then Simon stood up slowly, eyes glistening under the stage lights. He didn't say a word. Instead, he leaned forward, and with one powerful motion slammed the golden buzzer. Confetti exploded from the ceiling like a golden storm. Ramon fell to his knees, clutching his guitar, sobbing into his hands as the glitter rained down. The other judges rushed to hug him. Simon finally walked over and whispered something only Ramon could hear. That wasn't just a song. That was a message from heaven. Ramon looked up, smiling through his tears. In that moment, he wasn't just a street singer anymore. He was proof that even the quietest voices can reach the loudest hearts, if they sing with love. The next morning, Ramon woke to the sound of his phone buzzing endlessly. He rubbed his eyes, thinking it was just another dream, but when he opened his notifications, his breath caught in his throat. Millions of people had watched his performance overnight. Clips of his trembling hands, his tearful smile, and that unforgettable golden buzzer moment had spread across the world like wildfire. Hashtags trended. Filipino Elvis, Current Golden Heart, music with meaning. Everywhere, from New York to Tokyo, people were sharing his story, writing, "He didn't sing for fame, he sang for love." News channels replayed the moment Simon Cowell stood in silence, visibly moved. Commentators called it one of the most emotional performances in AGT history. But for Ramon, the real miracle wasn't fame. It was the messages. Thousands flooded his inbox, strangers from all corners of the world. A single mother from Texas wrote, "You made me believe that dreams don't have an age limit." A retired man from Japan said, "Your voice brought back memories of my wife. Thank you." And a street performer from India shared, "You reminded me why I started singing in the first place." Ramon read each message with tears in his eyes. He remembered his father's words, "Music can heal broken hearts." For the first time, he truly understood what that meant. As the AGT episodes aired, donations began to pour in, not for Ramon himself, but for others inspired by his humility. Someone started a GoFundMe titled "Keep Ramon Singing." Instead of keeping it, Ramon redirected it entirely. He founded the Golden Heart Foundation, a small nonprofit to support struggling street performers in the Philippines. He said in an interview, "Someone once gave me a ticket and a chance. Now I want to give that chance to others who think the world has forgotten them." The foundation began by providing instruments, food, and small recording opportunities for local artists. Soon, videos of those singers and musicians filled the internet. Voices once lost in the noise now heard across the world. Ramon didn't just share his music anymore. He shared hope. He often visited hospitals singing to children battling illnesses or old men sitting alone by windows. Each time he'd smile and say, "This song is for anyone who still believes that kindness can change the world." Simon Cowell invited him back to AGT's finale, not as a contestant, but as a guest performer. When Ramon stepped on stage once more, the crowd erupted in applause. But this time he didn't cry. He just smiled, calm, grateful, and proud, because he knew this wasn't about him anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been told they were too small to make a difference. And somehow, through the gift of song, the whole world listened. Months had passed since the world first heard the name Ramon de la Cruz. The lights, the confetti, the fame, all of it had faded into memory. But for Ramon, the music never stopped. It had simply found a deeper purpose. One quiet evening, he stood on the rooftop of a small apartment in Los Angeles, his guitar resting against his chest, the city glowing beneath him like a sea of stars. The wind brushed gently through his hair as he looked toward the sky. "Pa," he whispered, smiling softly, "I hope you're watching." He began to strum softly, a simple melody, slow and soulful. The same song he once sang on the rainy streets of Manila, now carried by the California breeze. It wasn't a performance, it was a prayer. Down below, a few neighbors stopped to listen from their balconies. A couple walking their dog paused on the sidewalk, drawn by the sincerity in his voice. No stage, no judges, just music, pure and unfiltered. As his final note lingered in the night air, Ramon thought about everything that had happened. The stranger's gift, the audition, the golden buzzer, the foundation he had built. He realized that every moment of struggle, every tear shed, had been leading him to this, not to become a star, but to be a light. A few weeks later, Ramon returned home to the Philippines. The moment his feet touched the ground, children ran up to him shouting, "Kuya Ramon, Kuya Ramon." He laughed, crouched down, and handed one of them a small guitar. It was the first instrument given through the Golden Heart Foundation. He began hosting small workshops for local street singers, teaching them not just how to sing, but how to believe in themselves again. Music isn't about being heard by millions, he told them. It's about touching one person's heart. And that's enough. One day during a community concert, an old woman approached him with tears in her eyes. She held his hands and said, "You may not know me, but my son wanted to give up singing until he watched you. You gave him hope again." Ramon smiled gently and replied, "Then everything was worth it." That night, as the sun set behind the Manila skyline, he stood with his students on stage. Together, they sang "Can't Help Falling in Love." The crowd joined in, hundreds of voices blending into one chorus of love and unity, and somewhere, in the stillness of the moment, Ramon felt it, a warmth deep within his chest. He knew his father was there, listening, proud, because this was never about fame. It was about the power of one act of kindness, a gift that crossed oceans, changed lives, and turned a simple street singer into a symbol of hope. And as his voice echoed into the night, one truth remained clear: kindness never fades. It lives forever, in the songs we sing and the hearts we touch.